What's up, YouTube? It's time for a review of the new ScHoolboy Q record, Blank Face LP, out this past Friday, July 8th. So, this is technically ScHoolboy Q's fourth record, but really, I guess, his second in the eyes of the rap mainstream. In 2014, Oxymoron was this huge breakout full-length for Q. It featured major hit singles like Studio and Collard Greens and Man of the Year and Hell of a Night. It even got him a Best Rap Album Grammy nod, if that really means anything. It, of course, lost to Eminem Marshall Mathers LP 2, but still, it was a major release for that year. A lot of people were putting Oxymoron in the best rap album of 2014 conversation. And of course, post Good Kid, Mad City, the affiliation with Kendrick Lamar did not hurt, with ScHoolboy Q being a part of Black Hippie and Top Dog Entertainment. Personally, with Oxymoron, I tend to sit directly in the middle between the dick riders and the naysayers who really didn't think it was anything special. I think it's a great record in terms of being a collection of mostly great songs. And I loved how ScHoolboy Q didn't really try to be anything he wasn't and just stuck to what he did best, stuck to his strengths, which mostly on that record were making banger gangster rap and party tracks over some fairly diverse production. He didn't pretend to be some lyrical genius. He didn't pretend to be some conscious rapper. He talked about gangbang and smoking weed and partying, but he did it over the right beats and with this visceral yet charismatic delivery that has become instantly recognizable. See, when someone like me criticizes a rapper like Lil Wayne or 2 Chainz for just talking about girls and partying and smoking weed, I feel like people often misconstrue it and think that I'm criticizing them just on the basis of talking about those things. But I'm not. It's more about the generic and uninteresting way in which those artists do it. A guy like ScHoolboy Q is the perfect example of how addressing these relatively well-worn topics in hip-hop a majority of the time can still make for great music. I mean, look at 50 Cent's first album. Look at Snoop Dogg's first record, which is basically the blueprint for a lot of what ScHoolboy Q is still doing. Oxymoron may not be revolutionary, and I definitely wasn't in love with all of it, but songs like Break the Bank and Man of the Year and Los Awesome with J-Rock are just undeniable. So overall, I thought the record was really good, but I just didn't preach the gospel of it like some people did that year. But anyway, here we are in 2016 with Blank Face LP, the follow-up to Oxymoron, and I don't think it's a stretch to call it one of the most anticipated hip-hop records of the year. It's been pretty quiet, actually, on the promotional singles front. We heard Groovy Tony back in early April, and then we got the track That Part with Kanye in like mid-May. So we were pretty much just left as fans to dive into the record feet first with not a lot of preconceptions. And that's how I preferred listening, honestly. I've been listening to this album constantly for almost a week now, and it is the strangest album to review because, to my ears, in terms of the quality of the songs, I'm hearing this 17-song track list in 3 separate parts. When listened to in sequence, Blank Face LP is like a 3-act play where Act 1 is relatively weak, Act 2 is stellar, and Act 3 is decent, but it's inconsistent. So I'm going to run through the track list in terms of these 3 acts to kind of explain what I mean. So Act 1 stretches from the opening track Torch through track 6 Right Out with Vince Staples. I was hoping this front third of the album would just be a grower, when an artist that you like and have been listening to for a few years comes out with something that pushes boundaries, that tends to happen, but most of it still completely misses the mark for me. You got the opening track Torch, which really crosses the line from ambitious to just chaotic and borderline cacophonous at times. The production from Nez and Rio just has way too much going on. There's busy bass lines and layers of electric guitars and pianos and some especially irritating sounding cymbals, and none of it meshes with Q's flow. And on top of that, Anderson .Paak's guest contribution here adds nothing but another headache-inducing distraction amongst what is already a pretty disjointed song. It's just, the whole track is a scattered mess, and whether that was intentional or unintentional, it really doesn't agree with me. Track 3, That Part, the single with Kanye, is my other least favorite song on the entire project, and Torch and That Part happen to occur within the first 3 songs. I just feel like this was only pushed as a single because of the Kanye appearance. Because other than that, it is so bland. It's got a typically ominous trap beat that would easily fit on like a future mixtape. Q's first verse is just this laundry list of brags without really an interesting flow. Then when Kanye comes in, he has this over the top high register delivery that is such a turnoff. It really feels like style over substance because he's got nothing interesting to say in the verse except for reaching for some lame quotables. It's just a terribly boring track. The one major highlight in this first section of the record, though, is the Groovy Tony Eddie Kane track. Both instrumentals from Tay Beast and Dem Joints are great, and they fit so snugly back to back with each other. And more importantly, though, on a record that's frankly oversaturated with features, like 12 of these tracks have listed features, and the rest all have unlisted features, Jadakiss just lights up the first half of this track. He really sits back on the beat patiently, and it practically sounds like he's delivering these bars through clenched teeth. It's so sinister and so aggressive. And there's some great lines too, like he drops the line, "3-man weave with the Lord and the devil," which is a hell of a visual. And then there's the line, "When I hug your mom and look over her shoulder, you'll notice I got the blank face," because he's been playing with the blank face theme throughout the verse, and that particular line gives me chills. And then on the Eddie Kane half of the track, Q's verse is a standout on the whole record. It's way more inspired, it's more technical, there's a little wordplay, he drops a line about being on the trees like a hammock, and he also lashes out at the uncle that he talked about on the song Hoover Street off Oxymoron. So this track, Groovy Tony Eddie Kane, and the first half of Know You're Wrong, which has this beautifully somber jazz piano sample, these are the two moments on Act 1 that really did anything for me. The rest of it was tough to slug through. Moving on to Act 2 now, we get this cosmic shift in quality. And it's a truly odd listening experience. Because the heart of this record, from the track Whatever You Want up through Never Change, is fucking excellent. We'll start with the track Whatever You Want, which features Candice Pillay on vocals, who just killed it on Dr. Dre's Compton record last year. Go revisit that record if you haven't in a while, because it's excellent, especially the track Medicine Man, which Candice slayed on. But anyway, Whatever You Want is one of my very favorites on Blank Face LP. Candice's vocals have this floating, ethereal quality to them that really beautifully balance out the hard-hitting kick drums at the bottom. It reminds me of how almost like an EDM producer like Cascade would utilize female vocals to kind of float on top while the rhythm drives the song. And this track actually does kind of have an EDM influence to it with those buzzsaw synths that come in at the tail end of the hook. It's just a knocking up-tempo banger. Then the track John Muir is my other real favorite on Blank Face LP. Most of the time, it's a straightforward, uncompromising gangster rap track, but Soundwave's beat transitions a bit and lets in some sax and some strings when the chorus comes around to kind of make it more of a multi-dimensional listen. Then adding in Sam Doo's beautiful melodic hook, it's just the perfect contrast to the rest of the song. And on the rest of the song, Q's flow in the verses is so spacious, which really lets his words sink in for a second before he hits you with that next description of street life. And there's some great wordplay here too, like when he says, "Ain't no biggie when it's small." I love that line. And of course, those DJ scratches at the end remind you that this track is 90s through and through. Elsewhere in Act 2, this excellent middle stretch of songs, we've got Never Change with R&B and neo-soul singer SZA. Love this joint. This one finds Q kind of stripping away some of the bravado for a minute, making some really sobering insights about black and black violence and the crime cycle. Definitely a heavy G-Funk influence in the production here, and SZA's vocals definitely reminiscent of Erykah Badu. And this may or may not make me any friends, but I actually love the track Big Body, which Tyler the Creator produced. It's a major mood change after Dope Dealer and John Muir, two real hood tracks that precede it. And it's a nice diversion from a track list that otherwise takes itself really seriously a lot of the time. Which is totally fine for this genre of hip-hop, but I just think it helps to have a track like Big Body to kind of break things up a little bit. Like, the best comparison I can think of is one of my favorite rap records ever, Cool G Rap Live and Let Die, which has the fun, hilarious song Operation Cockblock, which really breaks up all the other tracks where he's constantly killing people and stuff. And yeah, I happen to love the goofy Tyler the Creator beat. I think it's really catchy. And ScHoolboy Q really excels in this tongue-in-cheek headspace. And yeah, this middle chunk of songs, from Whatever You Want up through Never Change, is phenomenal. It totally turns the record around for me. But moving on to the third and final act, these last 5 songs comprise an ending to the record that's pretty decent at times, but it's inconsistent. First off, let's just get this right out of the way. The song Overtime is atrocious. It's a blatant grab at radio, and which is fine, but I Want to Fuck Right Now, that's not a hook, and that's not a catchphrase. I hate this song. Then there's the title track, Blank Face, which is a really frustrating track for me because Q had some really moving and insightful things to say about raising his daughter in that third verse, but then it just ends. It's a short, truncated section. I would have loved to see those ideas get fleshed out a little more. And then, kind of similar to Torch, the opening track, we once again find Anderson .Paak clashing with a beat that's a tad too complex for its own good. The song Black Thoughts has easily one of the best beats on the whole album. It was done by producer Willie B, but I'm not sure Q's lyrical content, especially in the first verse, jives with the beat. This is an instrumental that begs for some stoned out, contemplative kind of rhymes. I mean, Kendrick even mentions weed in the hook. And Q has some good things to say in the second verse, like let's put the rags down and raise our kids. But I'm just not sure if the way this song sounds and what ScHoolboy Q is saying mesh at all. And Blank Face LP closes out with Tookie Knows 2, which is a sequel to that interlude on Habits and Contradictions. I love the piano sample on this thing. And Q has some really compelling bars about basically being forced to participate in gangs at a very young age and then going to prison and kind of being caught in street life. But I don't like Traffic or TF's verses on this thing because they feel so braggadocious when to me, this song is much darker than that, especially given the lyrics in the hook, with like, we might die for this shit. But overall, I think it's a decent ending to the record. Overall, I think that at its best, Blank Face LP is some real muscular gangster rap with a noticeably progressive instrumental backdrop. It's just so inconsistent. It's kind of funny though how like its inconsistency is neatly divided into like 3 sections. I can watch my feelings change as I listen to this record. It goes kind of like, it's really weird. In comparison with Oxymoron, the lyrical narratives on this album are definitely familiar. Some violence, flexing, seamlessly flowing street stories, yet the production is much more diverse and much more expansive than Oxymoron's was. The problem is, this album ends up being bloated as fuck. And I realize I'm kind of at odds with the majority of fans, but it's how I feel. Still, I love the middle chunk of this album, and I think there's some decent moments on the 2 outer parameters. So overall, Blank Face LP gets a 7 out of 10 from me. As always, thanks so much for watching. Be sure to subscribe, leave a comment, or shoot me a message so we can continue to talk music, and I will see you guys soon.